Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving deep into Apple's Q2 2026 financial results to figure out the exact machinery operating behind the numbers. We aren't just looking at a successful financial quarter here. We are looking at unprecedented growth driven by an incredibly sophisticated corporate strategy. If you've ever wondered how a massive tech giant continues to find room to expand and basically redefine its own limits, well, you are in exactly the right place. Okay, to really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this quarter, we've got to start with one massive top-line number, $111.2 billion in revenue. Just let that sink in for a second. That is a 17% year-over-year jump that completely shattered analyst expectations across the board. In the world of massive tech conglomerates, finding double-digit growth at this kind of scale, it's practically unheard of. It sets a pretty dramatic stage for everything we're about to unpack today. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by unpacking that unprecedented top-line growth, break down the two main drivers, the hardware supercycle and record services, and then tie it all together with the ecosystem flywheel and what their future outlook actually looks like. All right, Section 1, unprecedented top-line growth. Let's see just how comprehensive this earnings beat actually was across the board. So, beyond that crazy $111.2 billion in revenue, their earnings per share hit $2.01. That's up a whopping 22% year over year. And net income, a staggering $29.58 billion for a single quarter, all underpinned by a massive 49.3% gross margin. I mean, we aren't just talking about making more money here. This is hyper-efficient, deeply profitable operational dominance. How do they actually do it? Well, Apple's business is essentially powered by two twin titans. You've got the hardware supercycle, led by the iPhone, bringing in nearly $57 billion, and the services ecosystem pulling in almost $31 billion. Combined, these two engines account for a massive 80% of total Q2 revenue. They're distinct, sure, but they operate as two incredibly tightly linked growth engines. Moving right along to Section 2, Engine 1, the hardware supercycle. This is basically the physical gateway into Apple's entire world. What's actually accelerating this hardware engine to that huge $56.99 billion mark? It's basically a three-pronged attack. First, you have super strong baseline consumer demand for the flagship iPhone 17. Second, they are actively expanding their market penetration with the iPhone 17e model. And third, bolstering the broader mobile computing side, you have the incredibly powerful M4-powered iPad Air. Put all of that together, and you've triggered a literal consumer supercycle. Now, here's the catch. Selling hardware is super lucrative, but it's inherently cyclical, right? Sales naturally spike when a shiny new device like the iPhone 17 drops, and then they kind of cool off. Apple knew that to sustain long-term predictable growth, they couldn't just rely on selling us a phone every couple of years. They needed to build a second engine to act as a stabilizing, high-margin counterbalance to smooth out those hardware cycles. Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, Engine 2, record services. This is where the strategy shifts from selling a physical product to providing ongoing digital value. This services segment didn't just grow, it completely blew past Wall Street expectations, hitting an all-time record of $30.98 billion. To put that into perspective for you, Apple's services division alone generates more revenue in a single quarter than a lot of Fortune 500 companies make an entire year. It's absolutely wild, and it definitively proves the compounding value of their highly engaged user base. Diving a bit deeper into the individual catalysts, you get the full picture. Alongside that huge iPhone demand and the record services, the Mac segment pulled its weight too, generating $8.4 billion, driven heavily by the new MacBook Neo. Even the foundational ecosystem base, stuff like wearables, home, and accessories, brought in a very healthy $7.9 billion. Every single piece of the puzzle has a clear catalyst driving it forward. All right, Section 4, the ecosystem flywheel effect. So, how do all these multi-billion-dollar moving parts actually connect? This right here is the absolute climax of Apple's strategy. It's a continuous, self-feeding loop. Think about it. Every time you buy an iPhone 17 or a MacBook Neo, you create unprecedented hardware demand that locks you into their ecosystem. That expands their overall installed base. More active devices mean record monetization through services. That generates a mountain of cash, yielding that $29.58 billion in net income, which they then use to fund buybacks and engineer the next wave of hardware. The cycle just starts all over again, with even more momentum. But the real secret sauce of this flywheel, it's you. It's the consumer. Once you're fully locked into this ecosystem with your hardware, the friction to switch to a competitor is incredibly high, and the convenience of their services is just so seamless. This captive audience is exactly what fuels those compounding, record-breaking services revenues quarter after quarter. It's a beautifully elegant, sticky business model. Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Massive Returns and Future Outlook. What does a company actually do with all that operational cash? Well, they reward their shareholders in a massive way. The sheer volume of cash generated allows Apple to execute an unprecedented $100 billion stock buyback program. Guys, that's literally more than the GDP of many entire nations. They've also raised their dividend to 27 cents per share. Meanwhile, even with some ongoing supply chain headwinds, sustained hardware demand is creating incredible tailwinds. This momentum projects a potential $300 stock valuation target by September 2026, backed by expected June quarter revenue bumps of 14 to 17%. So looking at these mind-blowing numbers, the twin engines firing on all cylinders, and that continuous loop of the ecosystem flywheel, it leaves us with one really fascinating question to ponder. With their proven ability to seamlessly lock in a captive audience and translate that into record-breaking cash generation, is there literally any limit to the Apple ecosystem? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.